I'm Ashley Hawkins, and I am the manga librarian. And today we are talking about Fanservice and Moe. So, I'm going to talk a little bit today about Fanservice and Moe, and what they are, and what kind of functions they serve within manga and anime, and so on. And provide just some context, because this is something that I think I get asked about quite a bit, just because it's, I think, something that especially school librarians are concerned about, in terms of how sexual some manga and anime can be, because it can be. It just can be. I'm not gonna lie to you and say, oh no, it isn't that bad. Oh, you're just being a prude. No, some of it's pretty sexual. And you need to be aware of that, and you need to make purposeful collection development decisions, and use your brain. But how can you know what good decisions are if you don't have some context for what some of this stuff going on is? A little bit of cultural context about Japan and some things that are slightly different in Japan, in terms of gender constructs and things that are slightly more acceptable in Japan than they are here in the West, and so on and so forth. So let's just kind of dive into things. The first thing I kind of want to say is that we are going to operate from the understanding that gender is a social construct. I think that's inherently necessary to really understand all of this. And when we understand that gender is a social construct, then it becomes very easy to then make the association that if Japanese society has been constructed in slightly different ways from American or Western society, then therefore those constructs are going to be slightly different. And there are going to be ways where things are similar but also don't quite line up 100%. And therefore we can kind of understand a little bit more the fact that this is all just constructions. I think that really helps in terms of this, because there are ways in which our societies are very similar, and ways in which our societies are very different. And one of those ways in which we are pretty different is in relation to sex and sexuality, and the body, and nudity, and what is acceptable in terms of the human body, and things like that. So I just want to kind of put that out there. I will say at the same time, modesty is important in Japan, but there are certain contexts in which nudity and communal nudity is a little bit more embraced, if embraced is even the right word, or is more appropriate, and therefore sometimes narratively those communal blurrings will be utilized in stories. So, for example, Japan has a long tradition of communal bathing. and family bathing. So, and it's also important to note that generally speaking, children in bathing contexts are not sexualized. So it's very common for an older person, an onisan or onechan or onisan, to bathe with a younger child. And these are scenes that you'll actually see kind of frequently, especially in shoujo manga, particularly in shoujo manga where child care is a part of the plot. There's often, it's a very common plot line where there's an older sister who either she's the sole caretaker, or she has a very absentee parent, so she has become the pseudo parent of her younger siblings, and that has made her more mature and more. It kind of puts her in like this Cinderella sort of context where she's always working super hard. She's working super hard at home, and then she's also at school and blah blah blah. But the important thing is that there will be bathing scenes, and it's actually a way to establish that you are family, or you're in a familial situation, that you're bathing together, that you're washing each other's hair and you're scrubbing each other's back in the bathroom. Also, sharing baths is common. It's common to fill the bath water, and then one person will use it and then the next person will use it. So conserving bath water is actually a common thing in Japan. So coming across each other in the bath, which is a common fan service trope, is not as crazy as it seems to those of us in the States. It's definitely, it pushes the boundaries of believability when they're people that are not related. But coming across each other in the bathroom is not totally crazy, because the bathing space is a space where there can be sort of a transience and a coming across of each other. And it's, bathing and shared bathing, like in spaces like onsen, or in, in communal baths, community baths. It's common to see each other in just towels and bathing in that way. So, there are non-sexual contexts in which to see each other naked, but in the context of a story where people are mutually attracted to each other, that can get blurred a little bit, and that can be titillating. But it's not as transgressive or shocking as it is to an American sensibility. So that's just something that's something I always want to point out, is like the big differences in bathing culture between Japan and the States, because I think that's like one thing that you really need to keep in mind, is that these are really the contexts where you're going to see that blurring happening. Now, that being said, there are fan service exists and is there to sexually titillate. And there are scenes, and they are particularly prevalent in shonen, that are there to elicit sexual fantasies, and that is just how it is. Let's go ahead and sort of dive into this deeper now that we've kind of set some cultural contexts. So, fan service, or fanservice, is exactly what it sounds like. It's there to service the fans. And actually, it doesn't necessarily have to be sexually explicit stuff. It can also be known as a servisu kato, we've got the sebesukato, which is a service cut, which is like a specific cut in a piece or in an anime that is made for fan service purposes. So it's just a cut, one cut that's there. I believe the first place where you can find it used in otaku media is Otaku no Video, which is a fun thing to watch, by the way. But I don't know how much sense it makes to outsiders. As you get more entrenched, I think it's a fun thing to watch because it gives a lot of context to what otaku culture is. Fan service is all about, like I said, servicing the fans. And anime fans, particularly shonen anime and manga fans, like to see characters in particular contexts. And depending on the anime, depending on the manga, that can be in wildly different levels of promiscuity. And those are just things to keep in mind. Things that are common in shonen manga are panty shots, the accidental grope, the accidental kiss is also really popular both in shonen and shoujo. The accidental kiss is just an automatic trope. The we tripped and our lips hit, because that's something that happens in real life. Yeah, accidental like contact of some either romantic or sexual nature. The accidental grope is way more common in shonen, and will happen. They'll trip. The guy will fall on top of the girl. His hand will always land right on her boob. And one thing I always say to look for is how that gets treated. Like, does that happen once in a series, or does that happen every other chapter? Is it something that the character gets punished for? Is it something that how does it play out? Like, how do the characters react? Does he get yelled at? Does he get hit? Are there consequences? So if there are consequences, then it maybe can be okay, But if it's constantly happening and it's just, there's no consequences, it's just a thing that this character keeps doing, it doesn't serve any purpose other than for somebody to constantly get grabbed, then we're in a danger zone here of the fan service being problematic. I mean, inherently it's all a little problematic, but we've got to take these things in scales, right? We can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Sometimes there are things that have great value, that happen to have at least one of these type of scenes in them, or something in there. And you want to know what the thing is? Sometimes mangaka are told by their publisher, you need to include this. You need to include an accidental groping scene. You need to include an onsen scene. You need to include this because we need to sell. Like, they're told, and especially for a beginning mangaka, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be pressure to draw certain types of scenes and compose certain types of things. So we have to understand that the industry is asking for particular things as well. Just as the the American film industry, the American television industry, there will be things that they ask for artists and actors to do that they may not be, that are all about fan service. So keep those things in mind, that sometimes there is pressure externally. So throwing out the entire story and the entire work of a mangaka based on something that was a directive from an editor to do, and they felt pressured in order to implement it, is kind of, that really stinks. And we should also be mindful of that, that sometimes certain elements get added to a story, not quite because a mangaka wants it there, but because, they're trying to increase sales. Always keep the wider context of the story in mind. That being said, there are going to be stories where there is quite a lot going on, and it's clear that the mangaka is incredibly problematic and there's something going on in his head, and let's not select that, right? So just saying, just like with books, that we select, as you get into like seinen series, older series, you are going to see more explicit things happening, more explicit sexualization, and you just need to be careful, and be aware. If a manga is for an older audience, you should be aware of what's in it. Certain mature themes are just going to naturally have certain things. So those are things to keep in mind in terms of fan service. But let's shift a little bit to moe. So moe is related to fan service, and moe is problematic. Okay. Today's the day where we talk about problematic things. So moe means burning. Okay. But it comes from the word moeru, which means to blossom. And moe is when you feel this strong feeling of affection or attraction toward a character in a piece of media. Usually there's this kawaii or cuteness factor. So you find them super kawaii. You just find them so precious. You feel this burning inside of you of passion for them. You feel a certain way. And moe is very controversial in the anime and manga community at large. Part of the problem is that moe characters are explicitly manufactured to appeal to men. So moe characters, what they tend to look like, they're female characters. They're hyper cute. They're usually kind of clumsy. They're constantly flustered. They're innately innocent. They tend to look like about 12, 13-year-old girls, although they're typically older. Sometimes, not all of the time. They generally wear like very fluffy, cute outfits, but they also can be really hypersexualized. They're often depicted in like these very sexual contexts. You can buy things like body pillows of them. Men can I mean, it's not just men who develop this level of intensity, but a fan, an otaku, can get to a particular fever pitch in his obsession with the waifu, and it can take a turn, where it goes from just really loving the character to considering the character to be their partner, to be their wife, to be their girlfriend. So they will consider them their waifu. And there are women who have husbandos, and it's their own. This is a whole thing. And I will say, in terms of this type of behavior, as an autistic person, I think that a lot of the time this is hyperfixation. And hyperfixation is something that we as autistic people do, where we will find something and we will exactly that, we'll hyperfixate on something, and we'll become obsessed with it. And it can be really intense and really all-consuming. And I think there is a certain degree of neurodiversity going on here, but I don't think it's just that. I don't think everyone who has a waifu has autism. I think that's too easy. It'd be too easy to say, like, oh, don't worry, it's an autism thing. There's an easy explanation for this. I think for some people, yeah, it is. But I think for other people, it really is like just more a form of maladaptive daydreaming, or just a really intense obsession that is based in a variety of things that are going on. So this is not something that's like easily lynched into one box. And I don't want to demonize people for participating in moe culture or anything. I think there are like some elements of it that are wholesome, and some people that are in it just to, there are some people who are in it just to have something that is special to them, and that they kind of fixate on, and it's just their thing. But we'll get a little bit more into the problematics. So what otaku will do is, if they have a waifu, they might build a shrine to her when it's her birthday. It's actually really common to know anime characters' birthdays. When it's her birthday, they will buy her a birthday cake, and sometimes they'll marry them. So there's a man named Kondo Akihiko. Kondo married Hatsune Miku, who is a Vocaloid. So a Vocaloid is a virtual reality singer. So he married Hatsune Miku in 2018. He has actually this thing called a gatebox, which creates a hologram and an AI of Hatsune Miku. And it's essentially an Alexa, but it looks like Miku-chan. And so he's married to Hatsune Miku, and he interacts with her because he has this AI bot of her, and he had a wedding ceremony and everything. And Gatebox reports that they've issued 3,700 wedding certificates to owners of their product. I think in a lot of ways, moe characters are safe because they are somewhat childlike. So a show that I actually like that has moe elements, that the characters are definitely built to moe specifications, is K-On! So there's this show called K-On! And it's about a group of girls who get together and learn how to play instruments. And that's it. That's the show. And it's actually really refreshing because there's no romance, subplots, or anything. It's just a group of girls, they're teenagers, and they're learning how to play instruments, and they're appreciating music, and that's it. Now, it's also a moe show, so they're really cute. There are musical sequences where they wear really cute outfits. The music's also really good for K-On! And they look super adorable. And they're manufactured this way for reasons. The reasons why there's no romantic subplot are so that the viewer can have the character to themselves. Whoever their chosen character is, he can have her. She doesn't belong to anybody but him. She's his. But she's safe. She'll never leave him. She'll always be young. She'll always be innocent. She'll always be pure. She'll never abandon him. There's a lot of stuff going on here. And as you unpack it, it starts to, let you know how these men feel about 3D women. And there's actually quite a bit about how men who are into this have a disdain for 3D women. That's even what they'll call us. They'll have this disdain and dislike of real women because they'll never be as perfect as these moe girls. And that's something we want to kind of be careful of. And in talking and working with students in like anime clubs and things, we want to make sure that we're not allowing that type of attitude to build, where the anime girls are put on this pedestal of being perfect, and the human girls are, they'll never be this good. So what's the whole point of them? We want to kind of create an environment where we can walk away from that. So first off, having maybe some series that deconstruct that. So Puella Magi Madoka Magica is a deconstruction series. Although I will say having conversations about it being a deconstruction and things like that is important so that students are aware that it's deconstructing. Having conversations about deconstructing this and how having a discussion in your anime club about, how these moe girls are just not possible, and allowing girls in your, the girls in your club to voice that this is like impossible to be like this, and maybe even providing some perspective. So these are like all things to kind of keep in mind. Like we want to make sure that our students don't slip into these behaviors that ultimately are unhealthy or can lead to them having lower opinions of women. And I think it just requires, like I said, a careful selection policy, and sometimes for us to do some legwork, having discussions, really working with students so that they don't develop particular attitudes that some very bitter anime fans on the internet have. Listen, there are people out there who will tell you, first off, that everybody in Japan is totally cool with all of this, the ways that women are depicted, and how dare you even try to say it's problematic. You're just picking on Japan. And in the same breath, say that all Japanese women are like anime characters, which they're not. Nobody talks like that. Nobody acts like that. It's fantasy. It's all fantasy. So we just want to really build that. And that's where I think an anime club is great, to have these talks of, well, this is what the reality is. So I hope this kind of gives some perspective, maybe answers some questions. One thing I will say is that what you can do is try to make sure you have female or women mangaka, or just try to have mangaka on your shelf beyond just certain voices. So have women, have there are trans mangaka, there are LGBTQ plus mangaka. There are a variety of voices that are being published right now. Do some legwork to get more inclusivity in your manga. You're doing it in your fiction collection, I assume. So do it in your manga collection. Have more inclusivity. Make sure there are women. If you don't have, I mean, there are some women that you definitely should have some of their manga on there. If you don't have Rumiko Takahashi, what are you doing? You should have at least one title by Rumiko Takahashi. These are all things I really think are valuable and important. And try to find things beyond just the titles that are the most exposed, and get some depth. And as you start to get some depth to your manga collection, you will see things moving away from the more problematic elements, because not every manga is problematic. Not every manga has excessive fan service. I hope this was helpful to all of you, and I am going to wrap it up here. So I will see you in the next video. Bye.